You know what? There are so many mistakes that you can make in life that have consequences that are obviously lifelong consequences. But you know what? It doesn't mean that God's through with you. It doesn't mean He doesn't love you. I mean, look, Peter goes down in history as denying the Lord Jesus Christ 3 times. Shameful what he did. Embarrassing. Especially, I mean, a young maiden comes to him. He wouldn't even stand up to a young maiden. He's, oh no, I don't know him. I don't know Jesus. To a young maiden. Like he's afraid of her. But you know what? Peter began to, as a result of committing that embarrassing, shameful sin of being embarrassed of Jesus and denying the Lord, he started to be swallowed up with overmuch sorrow. You know, when I read that Peter wept bitterly, I think to myself, you know what, Peter? You ought to weep bitterly. You've committed a major sin, buddy. You ought to be weeping bitterly. But you know what, Peter? The next day, stop weeping. Peter, dust yourself off and become one of the greatest apostles in the whole Bible. And that's exactly what he did. Because you know what? When I look at Peter and see him, and Brother Romero preached a sermon about Peter, how great Peter was. He's in the book of Acts. He wasn't in the 4 Gospels. A lot of his sermon was out of the book of Acts. Why? Because some of Peter's greatest works, his greatest preaching, his greatest ministry that he's known for is the ministry that he did after he denied the Lord, not before. The book of Acts is where Peter is a great leader. The book of Acts is where Peter is preaching the gospel, and thousands of people are being saved as a result of Peter's life. What if Peter had just quit? I denied the Lord. I'm a loser. I told him I was a sinful man. I told him he never should have picked me as one of his disciples. I told him he should have just picked someone else. Why did he even pick me anyway? He could have picked any of these hundreds and hundreds of followers. Why did he sing me out? I told him I was a sinful man. I told him I was not worthy to be a disciple. You know what? I'm just going to go back to fishing. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to let somebody else do it. But you know what? Nobody else could have done it like Peter did it. All those great sermons, the great sermon at Pentecost, the great sermon when Peter and John walked into the temple in chapter 5. I mean, the great sermons that he preached when he stood before the Jews and said we ought to obey God rather than men. When he stood before them and said, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. And he had great boldness. He preached with power. God used him to perform miracles. He wrote the books of 1st and 2nd Peter. But what if he had just quit? So you see how ridiculous it is to just think, you know what, I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to give up. Especially if you're a teenager. Yeah. You're in your 20s and you're going to quit. You're 30, you're 40, and you're saying, I'm done. I'm washed up. God can't use me. Look, you got your whole rest of your life ahead of you to do something for God. Don't be swallowed up with the sorrow of the world. Don't give up and have this ungodly sorrow that's a feeling sorry for yourself. I'm a loser. God can't use me. Nobody loves me. I don't have any value. Look, God still loved Peter, and God still loves you even if you've failed, even if you've made mistakes. It's not like you just can't be of any value anymore, or you can't serve God anymore, because you can. And that's why he said, go tell the disciples and Peter. He's saying, look, Peter, I meant what I said when I chose you to follow me, and I want you to keep following me. I know you messed up, but I want you to keep following me.